So what I'd like to do tonight, I'm going to try to do this in 20 minutes. I have like 80 slides, but don't worry, it's mostly pictures. I'm going to try to very quickly go through what we're doing in Chicago. And a lot of times people take these things for granted. The trains running overhead, or the streetcars going by, and a nice wide sidewalk, or the beautiful plantings, or the bike lanes. But all of those things create the environment for people to thrive. And our mayor in Chicago really gets that. He's a progressive mayor. He grew up in Chicago, and he wants to make sure that we rebuild the best parts of Chicago, and when we do it, we rebuild it for people. And he hired me to help him do it. So the first thing that I did when I got there, and this is the same thing I did in Washington, was to create a 2-year plan. And some of you might say, why a 2-year plan? Isn't your mayor elected for 4 years? Yes, but in Adrian Fenton's administration in Washington, I joined 2 years in. And the reality is, he might have lost, and unfortunately, he did, over schools. With our mayor in Chicago, I wanted to set really aggressive goals for the first 2 years, and then we're going to reset goals, actually, even after 1 year, for the next 2 years, and we'll probably set them again, so we'll do it 3 times within his first term. But you have to know your past to know your future. And Chicago has a really rich history in terms of transportation of all types. But in terms of bicycling, at least in North America, Chicago was the capital of the bicycle manufacturing industry, and they had more people riding than anywhere else. I'm not sure about Europe. This was a cycling club, obviously a little bit male-dominated, that was pointed out to me earlier, and wealthy people rode bikes, because they were the only ones that could afford them. Here's looking south on Wabash, which is actually right near my house. We have an elevated rail system that was built around the turn of the last century, and it's still there. And you know, we actually used to have more people in Chicago than we have now. We've lost a few 100,000 people, about 900,000 in the last 3 decades. But you can see we always had a very rich mix. People didn't always have a place to be on our streets. And then there's always the different modes, right, that are fighting for space. And you have it today with the argument over cars versus bikes versus streetcars versus pedestrians. And we'll talk more about that later, but we have the same problems that you have in Chicago. And I showed you that picture from 1907. You can see many elements of the city have not changed that much. The bones of the city are the same. We're trying to rebuild around those bones and recreate. And one of the things that we're doing is building new transit stations. Because when we build new transit stations, we find billions of dollars of development go right around those transit stations. This station costs about $46 million, but it'll pay for itself in about 2 years from the tax increment. So before I get into the fun stuff, the mayor's guide is building a new Chicago program. This is a picture actually from before we worked the kink out of this river, and I think before we reversed the river, which is a real engineering feat. You can see we had daily excursions to the drainage canal. So entertainment was much more limited back then. I can only imagine what was draining. But we have this rich history of transportation on the river. We'll talk more about the river in just a bit. And we have these amazing bascule bridges throughout the city, a lot of them. Most recently, we had to rebuild the Wells Street Bridge, which has been in service, I think, about 90 years. And it's a complicated bridge. It's a complete streets bridge now, or we're making it one. It's got rail on top. It's got bike, ped, car, bus in the middle, and then it has to open for the maritime traffic underneath. So it was a real feat, and we got national attention for doing this and rebuilding the rail portion in 18 days, because you can't shut down the busiest leg of the transportation system. Of course, we had the obligatory multiple press conferences celebrating our accomplishments. You can laugh, it is fun. So let's talk a little bit about placemaking. And when you think of placemaking, there are major, transformative, cool projects like this one I'm going to show you. And then there's really basic things. We have a big city. We have 221 square miles. And so to create great places for people, we have to be able to do it in a lot of different ways. The Bloomingdale Trail has been on the books since 1998. It's an exciting transformative project that will link 7 different neighborhoods with green space. Right now it's an elevated Canadian Pacific line, actually. And when the mayor came in, and the mayor is much like myself, much like Adrian Fenty, he said, we've been talking about this for 12 years, we're going to get it done. And so we went to work. We went to work on buying the right-of-way, we went to work on the plans, we partnered with the Park District, Trust for Public Lands, various other entities, raised private money, used congestion mitigation air quality money, used Park District money, used state money, and some county money to put together $76 million to make this project happen. And this is what we're going to get. So it'll basically be an active trail. Who's been to the High Line in New York? All right, it's nothing like the High Line. It's going to be beautiful, but the High Line is a piece of art, and it's absolutely magnificent. They spent over $700 a square foot. We're going to spend about $126 a square foot, and it's going to be much more focused on activity and moving people. It will have park elements. The park elements will be adjacent. You can see here, this is a before picture, and here's the after picture. And there will be 14 parks that will be built adjacent to the Bloomingdale Trail. And it will link a Latino neighborhood on the west side, Humboldt Park, all the way to sort of a wealthier white neighborhood, Bucktown. Here's another before. This is what it'll look like after. We probably won't have that much old growth the first day we open it. But it will be beautiful. This is one of those parks. And here's the western trailhead. What's really exciting about this, though, is we put together the whole plan in 2 years, designed it, engineered it. We'll go to construction this summer, and we'll build it in 1 year. So by 2014, the mayor, I promise him, will be able to ride from one end to the other. The next project, now this is one we sort of surprised the mayor with, is the Chicago Riverwalk. We worked on this one. I mean, Mayor Daley had built the first 2 blocks of the 8-block Riverwalk. And he wanted to build more, but it's a very complicated play financially to make it work. And so when the new transportation bill came out, and we saw that they had, and this is the state's transportation bill, of course, had this new TIFIA loan program elevated by a factor of 10 to $17 billion. We were the first people to put an application in for it, and we'll be the first city or state or any entity to get awarded a TIFIA loan under the new transportation bill in 8 months. The fastest they've ever done one is 18 months. Our CFO personally worked on it with me, and we got it done very quickly. We'll sign the loan in June, and we'll go to construction this fall, and it will remake the Riverwalk on the Chicago River, which right now is not so attractive, but it will be beautiful when we get done with it. And how many people have been to Chicago? Did I ask that? Oh, almost everybody. Okay. So some of you probably know it better than me. I've only been there 2 years, as I said. But if you've been to the Riverwalk, if you're up here on Wacker Drive, and by the way, we rebuilt all of Wacker Drive. We spent about $700 million. And you look over, you can't even see anything. You don't even know there's a Riverwalk there. There's a little place here that sells dollar beers in the summer, and I don't think they do much business, even $1. So we want to transform this. This is state to Dearborn. There will be cafe space and retail, places to sit, water taxi service. On the next block, Dearborn to Clark, which will link to our Dearborn bike lane. We're going to create the Cove, which will be an active recreation and transportation location. Again, with retail. And one thing I should mention, the most interesting part of this project is not the cool 25-foot build-out that we're doing on top of 12-foot build-out and all the beautiful art. It's the contiguous walkway that you'll have from one end to the other. So it'll be a true pedestrian walkway for all 8 blocks. Right now, you have to go up and down at every block. So it's not very functional for transportation. LaSalle to Wells. Zero-depth swimming pool. If you've been to Millennium Park, we have something like this there that the kids play in. There will be water taxi service here. We may add a boat slip, we'll see. Clark to LaSalle. I wish I could show you another picture. If you look at it from up here, you can see directly from the street, right down to the water. There'll be some limited performance space here. It's ADA compliant, and people can hang out amongst the trees, enjoy their lunch and so forth. Wells to Franklin. This is going to be a Chicago Public School classroom during the day. So the kids will be in here learning about ecology. For recess, they can come out and fish and hang out. And then at night, it can be used for special events, weddings, so on and so forth. Now this is really sad. This is that last block. It's double the length, and we're going to build it out 50 feet instead of 25 feet. We're using it for storage for the Wacker Drive construction project, which is not the highest and best use. Right across the way, on this side, there's $1 million condos being built. So we're going to transform it into the boardwalk. Now this is still conceptual. We're working out some final details, but there will be a big restaurant here, water feature here. We've thought about incorporating food trucks up here for more casual food, floating gardens, and there may be some retail opportunities there. So the retail opportunities and all of that will help pay for it. What's really interesting though is the tour boats that we already have. We have 2 tour boats. They will actually pay for about 80% of the Riverwalk project over 35 years. So we just had to put our minds to it and come up with the money and work on it quickly. This is a cool project, the Navy Pier Flyover, which is right down the road. If you've been to Chicago and ridden on the Lakefront Trail, it gets really congested around Navy Pier. So yes, we're building a flyover, but it's for bikes. So it's a $42 million project to decongest the riverfront at Navy Pier for bikes primarily. We'll kick that project off this year. It's a 3-phase project. It's going to take about 2 or 3 years to build. But it's going to be very nice when it's done. And all told, we're spending about $200 million over the next few years on bike-related projects. Maybe in the Q&A we can talk about how we were able to do that. So I talked a little bit earlier about we have some expensive projects, but we also have some things that we're doing that are cheap. The Make Way for People program actually has 0 budget outside of 1 person that helps run it. So it's a public-private partnership with our SSAs, and which is like our special alliance for retail type thing that we have around the city. It's like a bid. And so we have people spots, people streets, people plazas, and people alleys. Architects donate their time. We get between $5,000 and $30,000 from the SSA and private businesses, and we transform parking spaces, plazas, and things of that nature. Activate space, make it safer, make it useful for people. Here's a before. This is down on the south side in a predominantly African American neighborhood in Bronzeville. They actually planted vegetables, so you can come by and pick them, and then they put in furniture after this was taken. This is up in Andersonville. There was a parking space here before, and we put in this nice people spot that was designed by an architect that's just right across the street. And there's many more, and we're actually launching some really beautiful ones this summer. So I thought it would be good to talk about the Complete Streets Guide, which I have a copy here. We're actually shopping for a publisher, if anybody wants to, if there's any publishers here. But it is available for free on the website. And it's a really, really solid document. It talks about how to really not just talk about complete streets, but how to bake it into every single project that we do. And if anybody wants to see it, I only have 1 copy with me, but I'm happy to let people see it, or you can go to our website at chicagodot.org and check it out. So if you look at annual VMT, it stabilized. It was up at like 8.6, went down to 7.2. People are driving less and less and less across the country and in Chicago. I saw our bike mode share in Washington, D.C. double, and now it's tripling, and it's going to quadruple. The same thing is going to happen in Chicago. So our Complete Streets policy is a promise that everybody, all users of the right-of-way, whether you're young, old, disabled, that we look out for you first in the design of a project, all the way through, not only to the construction, but even to the maintenance of the project, to make sure that on an ongoing basis that it's useful for everybody. Now, the game changer for us, and why we've gotten sort of some attention on this, is that we changed up our mode hierarchy. Well, more really, we just started talking about our mode hierarchy. If you don't talk about it, then the default often becomes the car. And so we made a conscious decision to swing the pendulum far in the other direction and be open and honest about it and talk about it. Because a healthy city is a city that focuses on people. And if you focus just on the car, what you'll end up with often is an economy that's getting strangulated. You'll have air quality problems. It hurts retail business. And so we're focusing on the pedestrian first, the transit user, because the transit user is a pedestrian, the cyclist third, because we want to encourage people to cycle. And the fact is that they're also pedestrians, and auto users. When you choose to drive, you should be able to. But we're not going to design streets with you in mind as the foremost user of that right of way. In fact, in Washington, D.C., when I was there, a horrible incident where a woman had just driven into the city from the suburbs, parked in DuPont Circle, got out of her car and got run over by a truck. So everybody is a pedestrian sometimes. And so when looking at complete streets, we really split it up into the pedestrian realm, the roadway, and the interstitial area. And you'll see that we have bike lanes in the interstitial area and in the roadway. And actually this year, we'll be putting our first bike lanes in that are at a different level than the sidewalk or the street, sort of a mid-level, closer to the sidewalk level. This is just an example of what a complete street may look like. And we put out a number of publications, which I brought the Chicago Forward Agenda, which is our 2-year plan that I was talking about, the Complete Streets Chicago, which is a big burly book, and then also our Streets for Cycling Plan 2020. Now this, we spent about a year working on, and we went all around the city, and we talked to people in their neighborhoods. We went to about 23 different places in the city. We work with the Active Transportation Alliance in Chicago, which is a wonderful organization, quite much like CCAP. And we sort of reminded people of the rich history that Chicago has with cycling, and that we could get there again, and we could sort of take back or try to undo some of the mistakes we've made over the last 50 years. Of course, we held a big press conference, that's important. But even more important than that, first of all, the mayor ran on this. The mayor ran on creating the most bicycle-friendly city in the country. So this plan, when we came in, we had 116 miles of bike lanes in the city under Mayor Daley. This plan calls for 645 miles by 2020. It calls for 100 miles of protected bike facilities by 2015. Something else I was going to say, but I forgot. So here are the types of bike lanes. We actually call them, for the public, and you'll see it if you look at the manual, we call them spoke lines, the lines that come in and out of the city, neighborhood routes within neighborhoods, and then crosstown routes that link different neighborhoods together. There's 73 neighborhoods within Chicago. But from a technical standpoint, there's a lot of different types of facilities that we're looking at, and we're learning about them. We put in our first facility in 30 days, and we saw a huge increase, actually. I think this is a picture of it, of our Kinsey bike facility. We saw a 55% increase in bike use, and there were more, at the end of 2 months, there were more people on bikes than in cars. So we basically went around the city and we asked people, and I've asked people all weekend, how comfortable are you biking? And it's funny, I was telling some folks that I was talking to today, my wife was scared when we got the Bixie bike. She was scared to ride around the city. The taxi cabs were aggressive, like they are in Chicago. People speed. There aren't a lot of bike lanes. There definitely aren't a lot of protected bike lanes. I think there's really one. And so she is an example, my wife, of the interested but concerned. I'm more like this. I've been riding since I was like 4. I do ride in Lycra sometimes. I used to do freestyle and race mountain bikes, blah, blah, blah. But that's not who we're building these facilities for. And then you have people that are the no way, no how, like maybe like your mayor, I don't know, maybe. They're going to delete that off the video. But this is who we're trying to appeal to. And this, by the way, this is a buffered bike lane. We call it a buffer protected bike lane. You catch a little bit of flack for that. But the fact is that this feels totally different to ride than a standard bike lane. You don't have to worry about getting doored. Cars don't want to come across these two lines, because at least in America, two lines signify do not cross. So we're surprised actually how well that works. We put in facilities all around the city because the mayor didn't want to just put bike lanes into hipster neighborhoods or white neighborhoods, but all neighborhoods. And what he said is, he said, I want every Chicagoan to be within a half mile of a bike facility, whether you use it for athletics, health, to get to work practically. And there's a social justice element here. Not everybody can afford to have a car. And so we want to make sure that people have access to low-cost, high-quality transportation, whether it's the CTA, rail, bus, walking, or bikes. That, by the way, is on the south side, down by University of Chicago. That is that Kinsey bike lane I talked about. That was our first bike facility. And most recently, most recently is a new one I'll talk about in a minute, but in December, we took the Dearborn protected bike lane in. The coolest thing about this actually was our whole department came together to make it happen. We didn't outsource any parts. So our in-house electrical folks did all the signals, all the bike signals, the sensors. Our painting crews painted the stripes and put in the bollards, and we did it in a weekend. And this is what it looks like. So what's interesting is we had big wide, 14-foot lane, parking lane, 14-foot lane, 12, and a bus lane, which was violated on a daily basis by cars anyway. So we left the bus lane, which is being violated by a FedEx truck. We have 2 lanes. We have a parking lane still, a buffer, and then we have a 2-way cycle track. So this is one of the situations where people thought, oh my God, Chicken Little, the sky is falling. What are we going to do? We're losing lane of traffic. But the funny thing is, there are only 8,000 cars a day. And for those of you that aren't transportation nerds, like myself and a few other people in here, each of those lanes can hold 8,000 cars a day. So we had room for about 25,000 plus the bike lane. And people were speeding. They were going 45 miles an hour in a 30. So this is important, really. It sounds a little wonky, but all of our bike lane projects are really safety projects. The bike lane is an afterthought in some ways. We could just, and I told the state this because we got in a little bit of an argument. I said, look, we can just hash this out and get rid of this space and just move the cars over because we have too much capacity. And it's unsafe. It's unsafe for pedestrians. It's unsafe for people driving too fast. Or we can make it useful and put this in. So we were able to do it. It's very well used. I'll show a little bit more about it, I think, later. I hope. I have some pictures of sensors and such. This is Lake Street. One of the issues we have in our climate, you guys have the same climate, is keeping our markings refreshed in the streets. So you can see this is a bit of a free-for-all. There are no lanes, and you can go as fast as you want, pretty much. So we put some order to it, put in a protected facility with bollards and a buffer, brought it down to 1 lane. There's been 0 change in capacity for cars, but they have dropped their speed considerably. Here's Milwaukee Ave, which actually is one of the busiest streets for cycling in the country, in the U.S. I think 4,000 bikes a day. We're going to have protected bike lanes on most of it, but we're going to have buffered bike lanes around a couple blocks there. And back to Dearborn, we put in our first bicycle traffic signals. We also put in sensors. So we put in sensors that can pick up when a car is in the turn lane, because when we got rid of that lane, we have a turn lane at the intersection where the parked cars are. So the operations for the cars are considerably better. Traffic's moving better at a slower speed, but throughput is better. And then we actually are testing sensors for the bikes so that the bike can trigger the light as well. And we have all those bridges I was showing you, all those steel bridges that open up. We have a lot of them. And when you're on a bike and it's wet, you fall down. And so it costs a lot to fill them in with concrete. You need a lot of engineering. You know, a lot of times people ask me, how do you do things quickly? And I say, well, we got to sort of put our thinking cap on and not do it the same way we've been doing it for the last 100 years. And so we're now using fiberglass plates. It takes a little bit of time to bolt them in from underneath, but they're super lightweight. It doesn't affect the weight of the bridge. And so we're rolling them out much faster now and much cheaper. Now the game changer for us, you guys are lucky you already have it. My theory on Bixie here is it's wonderful. It just needs to be bigger, and you need some protected facilities so the average people that want to ride it will want to ride it. We're launching Divvy. I launched the Capital Bike Share system actually after going to Montreal in 2008. We launched it, Capital Bike Share, which is, until today, was the largest. I think New York launched today with 6,000 bikes. We are launching this not as a bike share program, but as a new transit system for Chicago. Probably the biggest investment in a new transportation system in half a century, although it only costs the city about $4 million. And we're going to be rolling these out all over the next year. The first stations will go live in mid-June. That's our plan. Much like your system, you can use it by the day, or you can use it annually. We went with Chicago Blue. People in Chicago love their city, they have a lot of pride, and we want to make sure they felt like it was their system. I think you guys know how it works, so I won't bore you, but it's really simple, really easy. How many of you use car share? Okay, so it's like the sort of second generation car share, where it's like car to go. And we paid for it with $18 million in federal money, including a Tiger grant from the stimulus program, and then $4 million in tax increment financing. So the TIF money that we have in Chicago in different districts throughout the city is meant to be used to stimulate economic growth. And so there's a recognition now in Chicago that these little nodes are like mini train stations, right? And so we were able to use TIF money. And we want people to be able to start riding in a suit. There's still this feeling in Chicago that if you're not wearing Lycra or bike shorts, you probably shouldn't be on a bike. We're going to change that. And we crowdsourced where the stations should go, so the public helped. New CTA stations. So here's that new Morgan station. It's really beautiful. We are trying to merge form and function. These are once-in-a-generation investments. We're building a new Chicago, and it's important to us that we put some time and effort into making sure that they're beautiful structures. That's the station at night. It's a very cool neighborhood. It's a Fulton Market, West Loop neighborhood. If you guys come to Chicago, recently called, I think, one of the hippest, hottest neighborhoods in the U.S. By Details magazine. If anybody reads that anymore. I do, actually. I don't know what that says. And then we're getting ready to kick off another station. This one we designed and financed in 12 months. We'll go to construction in this June, and we'll have it done by the end of 2014. So basically from conception to build in about 24 months or 30 months. And this is going to be the new entrance to McCormick Place and the whole South Loop area. And then bus rapid transit. So you guys, you don't know how lucky you are to have a streetcar system. Most North American cities were really foolish and succumbed to this idea that buses were the ultimate freedom, and let's just pave over it. And I love buses, but if you have streetcar, you don't want to get rid of it. The system you have is probably worth, I don't know, 10 billion plus at least. In DC, when I was working on the streetcar system, we figured out it would cost between 11 and 14 billion to put back even a fraction of what we had. We had a 220-mile system, and we're trying to build a 37-mile system. So you're very lucky. But if you have made that mistake, then bus rapid transit is a much less expensive way to accomplish a lot of the same things. I love this picture because this is from 1969 from London, from the TfL, I think they call it. So there's a recognition back then, that having everybody in a car didn't make a lot of sense. This is all those same people on the street, as pedestrians, or on one bus. So, we have 1 million people a day riding the bus and 800,000 on the trains. There's more people riding the bus. But we need to make some improvements. Often those buses are fighting with cars, or they're sitting behind those FedEx trucks that you saw earlier. And so by using technology, streetscapes and so on and so forth, and creating complete streets, we're going to create a bus rapid transit network in Chicago. The first project is downtown, which you'll see in a second, but this is a really exciting game changer of a project with center running lanes. We just announced this. And this is 20 miles north-south from the top of the city to the bottom on Ashland Avenue. Median running, we will leave the parking, it'll go down to one lane, and you'll have off-board fare collection and so on. This is downtown, this is before and after. And we're working with IDTP out of New York. Rockefeller Foundation has worked with us, again, being creative with the funding. They've given us $2 million because they want to see Chicago achieve gold standard bus rapid transit. And then last but not least, we're trying to, as we are with CTA stations, we're trying to make the city beautiful when we spend money. So here's the Congress Avenue streetscape. It's a gateway to the city. Here's how it was before. Now, I feel like we should have taken out more travel lanes, but it was designed before I got there. And it is better now. There's a ped refuge here, water sidewalks, and so on. This was in 2012, and then we added a really beautiful lakescape to create a dramatic gateway into the city. So when we were doing Wacker Drive, we did this. We saved a few $1 million. We used that few $1 million to create this LED lightscape. It's got 642 LEDs and 16 million color combinations. It can actually be managed with an iPad from a remote location. Hopefully it doesn't get hacked into. And that's all I have time for. Thank you so much.